Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 241 of Humanity Rising. It's a beautiful day in May, and it's a very opportune moment to contemplate that after more than a year of the challenges that have beset us due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that the lesson we are all learning in one way or another, consciously or unconsciously, is that we are of the earth. That a little virus coming out of nature is challenging us to reunite with nature and to come to probably the most fundamental understanding that's possible for us human beings. And that is that we are of the earth, that the earth is our mother, and that all the crimes that we've committed against the mother and against ourselves in the most fundamental etymology originated out of forgetting who we most essentially are. And so today we want to contemplate the mother. We want to contemplate Gaia. We want to contemplate the archetypal formations, the resplendence of the mother and all of her manifestations. And let us start that contemplation by just simply coming into our bodies. Our bodies are the mother. Let us take a few deep breaths. Let us place our attention on our hearts. For the next minute or two, listen to our heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and deep thanksgiving that the mother has given us life, that we're all alive at this most extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude for each and every one of you, I want to commence our program by introducing a first of very old friend of mine who you've seen before on Humanity Rising. And if you've attended any courses with Ubiquity University's Wisdom School, you know Andrew Harvey. When I first came into the university back in 2005, Andrew was one of the first people I met. And I would say that we fell in love with each other at first sight and have been friends and colleagues and brothers ever since. I've been intensely devoted to the learnings that I've received from Andrew. He's one of the great contemporary mystics of our time. He's written over 40 books. He teaches around the world. He was born in India, but educated at Oxford. So he embodies the wisdom traditions of both, I would say, the East and the West, both the ancient and the modern. He himself has been a devotee of Jalaluddin Rumi, the great Persian mystic, but has written about the mystics of many eras and ages, past and present. And it is through Andrew that we were introduced to V, formerly Eve Ensler, who you'll all know from many of her works, but principally the explosively dramatic play Vagina Monologues that I think have been translated into nearly 50 languages and performed in over 140 countries around the world, and has really been at the forefront through many other written works, My Body of the World, I Am an Emotional Creature, and others, and also in terms of her social activism, setting up V-Day back in the late 1990s to work on the whole issue of violence against women and girls, which evolved into 1 Billion Rising, which is really looking at the intersectionality of gender and sexuality and ethnicity and race around the world, which has been a major issue for Humanity Rising, and really has come up for the world in the last year through the killing of George Floyd, through the killings of some of the transgender, mostly women of color around the United States and globally. So we have the privilege today, everyone, to hear from two individuals who have dedicated their lives ultimately to the mother, out of which we all come. And during our brief tenure of consciousness, we serve, and back to whom we return. So V, Andrew, welcome with love. And Andrew, I'll turn the program over to you to commence our proceedings. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. This is the month of the mother. And of course we must contemplate her, but far more than just contemplate her. We must invoke her and bring her into our minds so that she becomes the master mistress of our minds, and into our hearts so that she explodes our hearts open so that our hearts can embrace the whole of our burning, wild, chaotic, miserable, amazing reality, and then into the cells, the burning cells of our bodies, so that she and we can become one passionate, compassionate agent of revolutionary change. Eve and I, V and I, it's wild how those two words come in and out of my mind, are planning a revolution of the mother in May. The 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and go to my website if you want to join up. And I hope to God you do, because this is going to be thrilling. And the reason why I invited my beloved soul sister, V, to join me in this wild manifesto of revolutionary change is because she is an authentic and passionate and pioneering and wild and fearless real servant of the mother. I first met Eve when she was stricken with cancer in New York, and I was taken to meet her by a friend. And because we were both going through very extreme things at the time, we plunged into the most amazing 4-hour discussion, which made us friends forever. And in that discussion, I met her molten soul. I love and admire and respect and revere everything that she's written, but I love and respect and revere even more the person that behind everything that she's written. Because for me, she has become someone who tests me, challenges me, invites me, expands me, and who really does know the mother at a very visceral depth. And the reason why we've called the event that we're going to do the Revolution of the Mother is because we are revolutionary evolutionaries. We are people who know the truth, the real truth of what the O.P.C said. The O.P.C said, if humanity does not turn to the mother will shake humanity off the world like a dog shakes off its fleas. Surely all of you can now see that this terrible apocalyptic shaking has begun, and it's not going to stop until and if we, you and I, not just contemplate the mother, not just love the mother, not just adore the mother, but allow ourselves to become one with the mother so that she, through us, can birth a new world out of the ashes of the old. V, I love you. I'm so honored to be doing this wild event with you. And I would love it if you would take that Hopi phrase and marinate it in your own boiling wine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear Andrew. And I just want to begin by saying, first of all, how honored I am to be with you, with Jim, with everybody who's listening today. I'm here in upstate New York, speaking from Lenape land. I just want to honor our 4 mothers and brothers who were on this land before it was stolen from them. I also just want to take a moment to honor our brothers and sisters and everyone in India and Iran who are suffering so in other places of the world, and just to hold them in our hearts through everything we do this morning. I love that expression, and I love you, Andrew. And what I love about you so much is your unabashed passion and your refusal to be tamed by the mechanisms of patriarchy, which want all of us to be so much less than we truly are. And you allow me and you give me freedom to be at my height, at my full passion self. I love what you're talking about in terms of that Hopi expression. And I think for me, and I was thinking about this because March was just 11 years since I've been well without cancer. And I believe the cancer is gone, and I believe the cancer was my initiation, was really came because I had to change, and the mother was trying to shake the flea, was shaking me off. It was like I was going to die or change. And I go back there because that was really the turning point of my spiritual evolution. And I'm so hard-headed and I'm so stubborn. And I was so broken as a child that I couldn't let go of the other way until I was right at my own death. And that moment of realizing that I had stage 3/4 cancer was a kind of wow moment. It was a shocking moment. It was also, if I look back on it, the most profound gift that I've been given in my life, because it forced me, it catalyzed me, it encouraged me to come to the mother, to turn to the mother, to be in service to the mother, to ask to be burned, to have everything burned away that needed to be burned away by Kali, the mother. And I think one of the things that happened for me during that period is, I think when we grow up in a traumatized world, when we grow up in a traumatizing family, when we grow up under white supremacy and capitalism and misogyny, overarching patriarchy, we grow up and we're driven people. We're driven by a sense that we are going to be left out because we're constantly being left out. We're going to be put down because we're being constantly put down. We're going to be excluded. We're going to be, and that drive, right, is what keeps us at the mercy of the system. That drive to prove ourselves, to get in, to say that we matter, and I was so on that drive. I couldn't, and even though much of what I was driving towards was trying to end violence against women and transform human consciousness, it was still driven in that direction. It was driven. So it was very kind of at odds with each other. And I think when I found out that I had a tumor the size of an avocado in my uterus, it was full stop. Whoa. And that began for me the beginning of, how shall I say it, moving from somebody who lived outside my body, outside of nature, outside of the mother, who was afraid of the mother, to somebody who began to come into my body, come into nature, come to an understanding that the mother was my mother, and not some distorted idea of a mother that I grew up with, but actually the mother. And that's begun an 11-year journey where I moved to the country, where I moved to the trees, where I moved to the sky, where I moved to the stars, where I moved to the birds. And really every day here, I live in the embrace of the mother. I am taught by her. I am at her service. I am at her bidding. I am learning step by step her ways, step by step how I can be in alignment with her and how I can be in service. And so I have enormous gratitude that she took me to that edge, which she will do, and she is doing to the planet right now. And to all of humanity right now, so that we will push to our awakening. And this week I was working on a song for a musical I'm working on about climate change. And there's this wonderful eco-femi science teacher in this fairy tale, and she's teaching them about extinction. And one of the kind of lead person in the story, this young girl, has a breakdown afterwards when she hears about what is being done to the mother. And she says, there's a thin line between waking people and breaking people in the awakening. And I think part of what we're going through right now is, how do we turn what is breaking us into what is breaking us open into awakening, right? And not resist whatever that thing is that is trying to get our attention because we are stubborn, right?
I would love to just focus on something that came up in our first conversation. In our first conversation, I held you by your shoulders and said, what you're going through is a dark night birthing process. You are going to die in this process, but not physically. You're going to die to the old person that you were. And it's going to be just as painful in certain ways as dying in the body would be. And you really leapt at that and embraced
my salvation. Because everybody was feeling sorry for me and feeling bad for me. Or not everybody, but a lot of people were. They didn't know what to say. And you were like, oh, you're going to die. You're going to die now. And something about that was so comforting to me. It was like, I know, because I knew I needed to die. I knew something needed to die. And you know, you gave me Kali in that moment. You said, let Kali have her way with you. And what I did is I had, I'm a great, Tara for me has been a presence and a guide in my life for a very long time. So I had an image of Kali, and I had a statue of Tara, and I moved them into my living room in the center of my house. And I'll tell you this story, which was really your push towards that. I didn't want to do chemo. I was really, I had 9-hour surgery. I had 7 organs removed, 70 nodes. I had infections. I lost 30 pounds. I could survive all that. But when they told me I had to put poison in my body, I just was so terrified. And I had this amazing therapist that I had worked with years before, and I hadn't seen her in a while. And one day she just showed up at my house, right? Just buzzer. And I think she had heard that I wasn't going to do chemo. And she came up and we sat down and I said, I just don't want to put poison in my body. It's just, I can't. And then she said to me something so beautiful. She said, oh, well, the poison's not for you. The poison's for the cancer. The poison's to burn away everything that you need to burn away. It's to burn away you being raped. It's to burn away the violence. It's to burn away all the stories you've heard over these 20 some odd years. It's to burn away what needs to go. And suddenly I had a frame. I had a way of seeing the experience. So every time I would have my chemo, I would literally sit there and I would see it as a shamanic experience. And I would imagine what needed to be burned away. And I would get down and I would pray to Kali and I would pray to Tara and I would just say, burn me, just burn me, melt this away. Take whatever needs to go so that I can be of higher service. And it actually worked. It happened. I mean, it was, 6 weeks of deep and powerful burning and transforming. And I think I was made in that fire. So I was made anew in that fire. And I'm so deeply grateful to you for that push to see that experience and not be afraid of that dying, to go into that dying, which was critical at that moment.
And in the body of the world, which if you haven't read it out there, is truly the most sensational and extraordinary memoir I know. I read it once every month. I keep it by my bed just to remind me of what a memoir really should be. Because in that memoir, you do something I think that is absolutely electrifying. You connect the horror and the agony and the passion and the awakening of your own journey into dying with the journey into dying of the world. And what I believe is that all of those who are now doing the great birthing work of a new world have had to go through a massive global dark night experience, a dark night that's at once personal and an initiation into the boiling, erupting, terrifying, apocalyptic dark night that is actually happening. They have to go through that because it's the only thing that will help them do two things. The only thing that will help them recognize that the dark night is now erupting everywhere, but that it is potentially a birth process. And it's the only thing that will make them fearless enough to stand up for the multiple revolutions that have to happen fast now if we're going to have a ghost of a chance of surviving. And that's what thrills me about all the work that has been pouring out of you since your dark night experience, because it's all been unbelievably vibrant and creative and filled with joy, but it's been a dagger aimed at the heart of the patriarchy to split it open. And it's been a monumental challenge to everyone to get down with the mother and get going with her passion and her wildness and her compassion. Mm. So what do you see from your own experience is now happening in the world? What do you recognize?
Well, I mean, so many things. I think if we look at this experience of COVID, what it has unveiled is this profound inequality, profound sickness, profound disconnect, profound racism, white supremacy, misogyny, inequality, lack of love and respect and dignity for the people who are frontline and saving our lives. I did during COVID, I worked on an amazing piece with nurses in the United States, where I just spent hours interviewing them and then created this piece called That Kindness, because honestly, our nurses are the bodhisattvas of our lifetime. They are literally there 12 hours, 9 hours a day, wearing masks, wearing hazmat suits in situations that are morally, psychologically, emotionally impossible, being midwives for people dying, being midwives for people coming back to life, being the people who escort people out of this world because their families cannot be there. And yet we disrespect them, we dishonor them, we don't protect them, we don't insist that they have the proper materials to wear, the PPEs, we don't make sure they get paid, we don't see ways of protecting their families, we don't give them hazard pays, we can go down the list. And this is reflective of our world, which is, all I can say is those who keep us alive, those that care for us, those that are the front lines are the honored, the least respected, the least valued, and yet they are the people who we need and are most essential to our well-being. So that it has revealed that. It has revealed, honestly, that if we don't begin to create a world, I mean, and for me, I'm very obsessed with patriarchy right now because I always go back to it. It is the system underlying, is the mindset underlying all the structures, right?
It's the source of all the abuse of your life. Everything that you've experienced intimately and terrifyingly has come from that domination model. And you know it because it violated your ultimate being in ways.
And body. And it's doing exactly that to many women's bodies.
To the whole creation.
To creation. I mean, whether it's 1 out of 3 women on the planet who will be beaten or raped in their lifetimes, whether it's the fracking and the raping of the earth and the plundering and the taking more than one's own, whether it's the sense that people have a right to the earth without consent or without dialogue or without being in relationship. And I think it's revealed it all. So now we have a choice. We can't say we don't know anymore. We can't say, oh, it's a mystery. We either change our ways, I believe, or we're going to perish.
Well, and the one thing we can't do either is be passive and just expect the mother to do it, that the mother is somehow going to just organize our rebirth. Because what this process is revealing is that we have to turn up, blazing with adoration for her, but also blazing with radical commitment to put into practice urgently multiple revolutions on every level. Because what this terrible time is revealing is that we will either choose to be her agents of transformative change or we will die out.
And I think part of that is coming to understand in your body, in your being, in your soul, that you are the child of the mother. You are her child. And I think part of what the mechanization of capitalism has done and the mechanization of corporatization has done has created the separation that hasn't allowed us to feel the depth of our connection to her. So we don't fight for her. So one of the first things I would say we need to employ in our revolution is radical empathy, radical empathy, which allows you to, like what I know, for example, I'll tell this really funny story about a tree on the land where I live. I'm very, very connected to all the trees here. I have deep relationships with them. And sometimes I realize I haven't recognized one or seen one and I can't believe it. But one of these trees was just really, it was covered in all these kind of bushes and vines and whatever. And one day I was walking by the tree, and because something's happened to me here where I'm in tune and where I can hear and I'm listening, I heard this tree say, "Help me. Help me." And I turned and I realized the tree was completely suffocated in these vines, in these bushes. And so I cleared out all the bushes. And the tree, I mean, it is just amazing what happened with this tree. It just began to flourish. And now this spring, she has come back with the most amazing, amazing blooms and blossoms and life force in her. And what I realized is, when I lived in the city, when I was on that path of absolute compulsion and drivenness, and I couldn't hear anyone. I couldn't see anyone. I wasn't in tune with anything about, except for this direction I was headed in. And God knows where I thought I was going, but I was going there with all my intensity and a lot of energy. And now when I've dropped in here, I feel what she's feeling. I can hear her. And there's something about the beginning, and that's the developing of this empathy, is taking the time to listen, opening up our hearts, opening up our souls, opening up our bodies, so that we begin to feel not just what's in the earth and nature, but in each other. When we sit down next to each other, what's going on in that person next to us? What hurt? What suffering? What needs? What desires? What's going on? We have to redevelop and I don't even know if it's maybe for the first time, we have to really imagine that empathy is a tool that will lead to the deconstruction of hierarchy, because it is impossible to be in hierarchy when you are feeling the fellow suffering, the suffering of your fellow human beings. It is impossible. You are one with that suffering. You are in that suffering. You know?
One of the things that you and I talk about a lot is that if you are going to develop radical empathy and become a channel for it, you're also going to have to face your terror of love, your terror of being exposed and vulnerable to all the suffering that your created persona has been designed to exclude.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've always said is that that's why I take the mystical path so seriously, because in my own experience, when I started to open to what's really happening, I felt absolutely on the verge of madness. Because when you start to open and when you start really to feel what's happening to the elephants, what's happening to the lions, what's happening to African Americans, what's happening to women, what's happening to gay people, what's happening to transgender people, when there is no separation, you are invaded by huge tsunamis of heartbreak. So what you need is a strong heart, a heart that's broken open enough through and sustained and fortified by adoration enough to be able to stand such empathy. And that's why the revolution of the mother has to be founded, from my point of view, in a mystical understanding of her, so that she can feed you constantly the strength that you need, not only to bear the horror of what's happening, but to rise from that endurance into a column and fiery pillar of joy in action.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that true? Don't you find that?
And I would say related to that is we live in a culture where no one dies, where no one gets old, where no one has grief, where no one has any room for the expression of sorrow, expression of suffering, you know, and what I feel, particularly now, and particularly through COVID, because I really allowed myself in this time to feel the grief of all the people who were leaving our world. I lit candles every day. I let myself weep for that loss. I let myself feel that. And I think we're afraid of grief. We're a culture that is so afraid of grief.
God.
We're terrified of it. And yet what I've learned over and over and over again is there's a river. Grief is a river. And when you step into the river, you do sometimes go very, very fast and it's out of control. And sometimes you may even go over a waterfall. And sometimes but in truth, if you step into the river of grief, it will take you to the other side. If you sit on the shore, you will ache, you will crumble, you will break, you will become suicidal, you will become depressed, you will become lifeless, you will not have your life force. And I think what I've really learned in my lifetime, because I came from enormous amount of grief. I came from violence, and violence for me is, you know, I used to say that tears were, that bullets were hardened tears, right? That basically violence is the lack and inability to express our grief, right? So it hardens and it becomes this other force. And I think part of what we need to do is to be in daily grieving with each other, and not think that just because you grieve, you will only grieve. That's a part of the story. But we have many aspects and facets to ourselves where we can be grieving and loving and grieving and dancing and grieving, and it's not all consuming, and it doesn't take you over, and it doesn't do you in. And I think we need to let our hearts be broken. We need to let our hearts feel the sorrow of what we're doing to the world.
And that's what the mother is inviting us to, isn't it? To reimagine heartbreak, not to be terrified of it, but to realize it's an initiation into her heartbreak and the vast love that allows her heart to break and be shattered again and again, and yet not paralyzed, because each time the heart is truly broken, it breaks open, and eventually it becomes a vast embrace of the whole of reality, sustained by her and in her. And from that place, you can rise and do anything.
And I think connected to that is something I've been thinking so much about, because I'm just thinking about portals, openings, right? To me, the greatest portal is the wound, right? The wound is the portal. The wound is the portal. The wound is what we walk through to get to the other side. And if you refuse to walk through the wound, if you refuse to touch the wound, you will stay in a very, in my opinion, in a very, very bad state, because you're just not moving towards that opening that is calling you. And my life experience has shown me that every time I come up to one of these moments where I think, I can't do this, this is too painful, I won't ever survive this, whether it's a person having left me, whether it's having stage 3-4 cancer, whether it's the loss of somebody dear in my life, that moment is the moment where I go through something and become deeper, clearer, more connected to the mother, right?
One of the things that you and I have talked about as the great healing power we can connect with is beauty. And you and I have spent many hours and many afternoons and nights raving ravishingly about beauty, about the need to feed in and off beauty. The beauty is the mother's great balm to us, the great wine that she's pouring out for us. And that at this time when so much is so ferociously ugly, so horrifyingly vile, inwardly and outwardly, beauty becomes the ultimate source of courage and fearlessness and passion for justice. How does beauty work in your life?
You know, it was so funny. I was thinking just this morning, I was looking at the land right now, because spring is just so, it's just so magnificent right now. And all the tulips and all the daffodils, jonquils and the lilacs, everything just, it's in full blossom. And I was just, this morning, I was just standing and I was just inhaling it. I was inhaling it. It is balm. It is a healer. It is what the mother has offered us to transform whatever pain we have, to heal whatever wrongs have been done to us. That beauty is a healer. And it's also an inspiration. It's calling us to be more than we are. It's calling us to create. It's calling us to, I don't know, it's emancipation. It's a form of emancipation,
right?
Because it's so magnificent, you know? And I think we need to surround ourselves with beauty. Like when I moved here, I decided that I wanted the house, every room, to be an altar to the mother. Like I wanted to just make
too, yes.
So beautiful and so much an altar to her, that she would feel my praise. She would feel how much I cherished her. She would feel how much I loved her. She would feel and how she could come in through the windows to inform and make whatever I was attempting to offer her even more beautiful. And I think we have to create, first of all, I think our lives have to be altars, right? Our rooms have to be, our bodies are altars. Like how do we create a life of service where we, as Aurobindo says, like where there is nothing we hold back, nothing we keep in reserve, no little thing in our head which says, if we have this, we won't give in, but we give ourselves fully. And every day we work to see where we are still tangled, where we are still holding back, that we can't fully give ourselves to her, you know?
I remember once with my great teacher, Father Bede Griffiths, he said to me, I know what's going to happen when we cross over the waters of death. And I said, oh, do tell me, Father. And he said, it's not going to be judgment. We're not going to be judged. We're going to be exposed to a love so vast that we will see all the ways we didn't do the work to respond to it. And that will be mortifying. But once we've got over that, that love will flood us. But what we're saying is that we need to be flooded by that vast love right now, right here in the middle of the world, because it's only beings who are flooded by that vast love, who can endure the heartbreak of that love, who can rise in the joy and passion of that love, that can be servants of the great birth that is held out to us through this great death.
And I think
beauty is our chief helper in that. The beauty of the great mystical poets, the beauty of the great composers, the beauty of the sublime artists, the beauty of nature, the beauty of beautiful behavior in the face of extreme chaos, the beauty of nobility. All of these forms of beauty have been given us by the mother to inspire us. And when you're talking about beauty, I think of two things that we've talked about a lot. I think about the forms of beauty that are so immensely powerful because they're forged out of extreme suffering. I think of the voice of Callas, which is a voice of fire and tears, but so beautiful because it doesn't deny the pain, but it transfigures the pain. I think of the beauty of flamenco that absolutely blazes with the difficulties and the conflicts of real passion, and yet takes all those difficulties and conflicts and makes them into an order that constantly challenges anyone who's watching flamenco to become so much more real, so much more authentic, so much more vibrant, so much more passionate. Those forms of beauty that are formed out of agony, that have the streaks of blood on them, are also very sacred and very important at this moment, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking of Tina Turner.
I'm thinking of your work, for fuck's sake. I mean, but
I'm also thinking of Tina Turner, who I had the privilege to interview this year, and how when you're in her presence, you can feel the suffering she has been through, and you can feel how she has turned that poison into medicine, how she turned that poison into radiant energy and inclusive power. And, you know, I want to say something too about, I want to say something too about passion and love. You know, I remember when I was a child, before the terrible things began to happen to me, I loved everyone and everything. I just loved. I would see people and I would just run to hug them. I just loved trees. I loved everything. And I remember being shamed and being taught that you can't love everyone. You must be discerning. You must be selective. You must not give yourself like that. You must not be vulnerable in that way. You must not open yourself in that way. And I didn't understand what people were talking about, but I knew. But I was shamed. I was shamed into
for love, shamed for tenderness, shamed for affection. I was as a child also. It's horrific.
And so I think about the insanity of shaming people for loving, right? And what I really am working on now is to say, no, actually, I do love people like that. I do feel that amount of love. I do feel that open, and I'm not going to apologize for it anymore. And I think part of what we have to do now is be unabashed lovers of people, where we don't go, oh my God, you know, you really can't trust that person because she loves everyone. You can't trust him because he's so kind to everyone. Actually, that is the person you can trust. The person who is loving everyone, the person who is, you know, and I think, you know, one of the things I learned from this Tina Turner interview when I heard her, was that when you get to the point where you are fully in your body, where you are
Yes.
fully in yourself, you don't have any fear anymore or any apology about loving and wanting the best for everybody in the world. It isn't something that proves you're like snark is the kind of currency of the day. Proving that you don't care, proving that you don't love other people, proving that you're cynical, proving that, I mean, that's how hip culture works, right? And I think part of it is going, no, actually, what's really interesting to me is people who are willing to say yes, I'm open, yes, I love, yes, I want to know how I can disentangle and clear more and more and more out of me, so I'm less judgmental, less withholding, less manipulative or strategic in my loving, but actually much more spontaneous and real and authentic in my loving. And I think
fierce if necessary too, because
fierce,
love can be very fierce, and that
yes,
too is what we're shamed for.
yes,
Because when you express passion, when you express outrageous grief, when you express agony at injustice, which is part of love, you're also shamed in this culture.
oh yeah,
Because this culture is addicted to a fake cheerfulness, which is actually a deadening sign of dissociation. Because real joy is not born out of a denial of agony. Real joy is born out of the total experience of agony as a form of love.
and gratitude.
And gratitude, yes.
Because one of the things I have the privilege of being one of the co-founders of this amazingly holy, beautiful place in the Congo called City of Joy. And, it is a sanctuary for healing, and it is a revolutionary center where women who have suffered really terrible sexual abuse come to be healed, come to be held, come to be educated, come to be lifted, come to build community. And they go from being, victims to survivors to leaders. And one of the things I have learned from them, and I have learned many things from the women there, and is that we in this country in the West, right, are so spoiled. We don't even know how spoiled we are. We have so many riches. We have so many advantages. We have so many luxuries. And one of the things I've been aware of lately, having all of us been shut down and not being able to see each other, is like how precious everything is becoming, how precious contact with people is becoming, how precious touch is becoming, how precious any kind of interaction, how precious getting on an airplane is, right? How precious. And part of what I think I've learned in the Congo is that joy is gratitude. Joy is appreciation for what you have, whether it's that meal, whether it's that pange you just received that you can make your beautiful dress out of, whether it's the communion of other people. How do we, all of us, begin to develop gratitude that is so all-encompassing that it becomes our new joy, right? And not take all these riches and all these things that we have for granted.
Last night we were talking about all of the qualities that you've been beautifully sharing, but we ended with something that I felt was really important. And this is something that I know that in your journey into the mother has been an immense discovery for you. And we said that what's so important is to cultivate wonder and magic. Can you describe some of the experiences that you've shared with me? You've been awakening to the wonder and playful magic of the mother that have just blown your heart and brain open.
There's just so many. I mean, I'll even tell you about finding this place, because I think it was such a magical experience. I was with a very dear friend. It was Mother's Day.
Yes.
Okay. And she woke up and she said, we really have to get in the car and drive right now. I have no idea why, but we have to drive. And I had been looking for a place in Croatia, in India, in Italy. I was planning to leave America. I don't know what, I was just fantasizing about where I wanted to live. And we got in the car and we drove down this road. And she said, oh my God, that place, no, people have lived there for 20 years. It's on sale. Do you mind if we drive in? And we drove in, and it had gone on sale 15 minutes before. 15 minutes before. And literally, I drove into this place and I went, oh my God. And I literally saw, I have a thing for weeping willow trees. They are my heart of hearts. And there's this tree that I have named Mercy, who is like this amazing tree. And I came back the next day and the real estate agent said something amazing just happened. A robin flew into the house. And I said, a robin? And of course I looked it up and it said, when a robin enters your house, it's the beginning of the next stage of your spiritual existence. I said, I'm taking the house. That was just that was it. But I think what I want to say is, once you become awake to the mother, then the mother will, there are visitations. There are visitations that happen right and left. And then you begin to say, oh, like for example, in my backyard, right? I'm obsessed with V's and have been my whole life, which is why I changed my name to V. I feel like I come from the people of V wherever I come from. And I now know I come from the people of V.
But it's also because of the adoration, isn't it? Of the V.
Yes, like
you want to be that V. Yes.
Pray in a V, the mother will come down and meet you in a V, which is a diamond. And that's when illumination can occur. And like in the backyard, there was a tree. And right when I came here, there was a storm one night and the tree blew off, split in half, and it landed literally in the earth in the shape of a V, literally in the earth. I feel like all of these things become obvious, signs, visitations, once you begin to dance with the mother, once you begin to live in the stream of the mother, in the story of the mother, she will begin to show you signs every day. Or
and those signs will convince you at the deepest level that she is with you, that she's sustaining you, that she will give you the strength, the courage, the fearlessness, the joy, the gratitude that you need to be her blazing.
Tell me some of the things you've had about that magic. Tell me, like when you've seen things that have spoken to you like that.
Well, I think for about 30 years, my life has just been an explosion of that. I don't mean that I expect that, but that every single day, I tell you the most extraordinary, really, which was when I was going through my own terrible dark night experience, which lasted a long, long time. And one day it was a horrible day because my life was being threatened and my husband was dying of cancer and everything was burning. And we decided, because we were in total desperation, to go to the mission and worship her. Just go and say, you have got to save us because nothing else will save us now. We're completely vulnerable. We're exposed from every direction. There's horror. And when we did that, I went and bought a little Mexican card of her with her exposed heart, and I put it on my desk. And then I went out and looked out of the window, and then I came back into the room, and the desk was covered with water, or what I thought was water, but actually it was rose water, and it was coming from the heart. And I turned the card, and it said on the back, and I hadn't noticed this, whatever happens, I will protect you. And I just howled with pain and with joy, because it was an unmistakable miracle. And those miracles multiplied because things got worse, and they did get worse. The house kept filling with her rose. The icons wept. I would dream of her and she would give me instruction. And then she, through a series of miracles, introduced me to somebody whom I actually never met, but who'd been trained by Padre Pio, who every day would ring me and say, don't go to the meeting that they're trying to get to do, because they'll probably try to kill you at that meeting. Don't go. It's at 11:15. There's X, Y, and Z there. And I felt, oh my God, I've known nothing about reality. Because once you are flayed open by truth to her, she will show you in utterly unmistakable ways how she is protecting you and guiding you. And if you have the humility to follow the outrageous signs, you will be kept safe in sometimes extremely dangerous circumstances.
And I think it's really about humility. I just want to tell you this story that happened to me, which was the beginning. I got sober many, many years ago, like 44 years ago. And at the beginning, it was very, very hard. It was very hard because I was such an anxious, broken, I was in a very bad place. And they were talking all the time about a higher power. And I was so cynical, and I was like, higher power, what is a higher power?
Higher power, yeah.
Power. And one night I was I lived on Christopher Street on the 4th floor, and I just very sarcastically said, I was getting bitten by mosquitoes, and I said, okay, mother, okay, higher power, whatever you are, if you're there, get rid of my mosquitoes, right? And I went to sleep. And the next morning I woke up, and there on my dresser, there was this huge, strange Martian bug. So I ran next door to my neighbor, and I said, come over, I don't know what's on. And she said, that is so strange. I've never seen one in New York City. It's a praying mantis.
Yes.
They eat mosquitoes. And I went, okay. I had always I always thought that praying mantis was spelled Preyying, right? To prey upon, right? And of course it was spelled PR, and it stayed in my room for 4 days, and it prayed, and then it died praying. And that is when my whole life turned around. That's when I said, okay, cut to, and I'm just going to share one of these stories because I've had 4 visitations, but the other one was just an amazing moment. I was doing this touring of this acting kind of method I was teaching around the country to girls' clubs of America, helping girls, really learn and trainers learn this method. And I met these 2 amazing women, and they said, oh, we feel really connected to you. They were Lakota women, and they invited me to a sweat lodge in the middle of the Badlands at night.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And we drove through the Badlands, and the stars were just falling out of the skies. And we went to this amazing place, and there was the rib cage of the mother, right? And they started to build the sweat lodge and put blankets and hides over it. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to have to get inside there. And then they're going to close that. And I'm very, very claustrophobic, horribly claustrophobic. And I thought, oh no, I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to do this. Is going to. So of course you take off all your clothes, you climb inside around the edges of the pit where the hot rocks are. And then they close it and they put water over it, and the steam comes. And I started to have anxiety, and I started to think, I can't do this. I can't. And the woman next to me could feel it. And she said, just pray to the mother and ask her to take your fear. So I went, okay, pray to the mother. Within 5 seconds, my fear left. We stayed in there for hours and hours and hours. When we came out, the medicine woman who had been leading the sweat said, look up, do you see that blue dot? Do you see that light? That was the owl spirit who was with us. I was like, wow. Came back to New York. I live 14 flights up now. I really got into this way of, I really committed myself to a deeper form of prayer, deeper form of alliance with the mother, with just whatever the higher power was. Next morning I woke up, on my counter was a praying mantis. And I literally have had 5 of these visitations over the years, in Paris, here, there. I know the mother is with me. I know the mother is with me. I know she is protecting me. She is filling me with grace. She is filling me with love. And it is my job, our job, to protect her at all costs, to give ourselves to her, to know that we are her. We are this life force pulsing back and forth, that there is no separation, and to remove everything in us that keeps us believing we are separate. Whether it's shame, whether it's arrogance, whether it's superiority, whether it's whatever we've bought into in the system that makes us feel like we are somebody. What do we have to keep stripping away in ourselves to strip away at that separation, and to keep understanding that we are her, and her life is our life. Her heartbeat is our heartbeat, you know.
Darling, let's end this temporarily there, and then just invite everybody to come to our wild weekend, where there will be much more of this and opportunities to talk with both of us and sharing on a mega level. I cannot wait for this. It's something that I've longed for a long time. I love you. I'm so grateful to be doing this with you. Bless you.
Whoa, V, Andrew, thank you so much. This has been very, very powerful. And your stories reminded me of something that happened last year to me in Amsterdam that I'd like to just share because it's a powerful indicator of possibility when one gets aligned. The pandemic had hit. I wasn't sure what to do. I was holding the intention for the viability of ubiquity and what we were doing. And, we were challenged in a variety of areas, as people all over the world were. And I was meditating and just supplicating the infinite just to enable me to lead in the way that was necessary so that we could navigate through what was coming. And I asked for a sign. I said, just do something kind of out of the blue, and I had no idea what it would be. But as it so happened, these glasses that I wear, I had gotten originally in 1969, and I'd worn the same frames for over 50 years. And they were broken and they were twisted and they were hanging sideways on my face. But I loved these glasses. And I had been told that they don't make them anymore, and you're just going to have to get a new pair of glasses. But I just couldn't bear the thought of having another kind of pair of glasses on my face. So I was there in Amsterdam. I was walking down the street after my meditation, having asked for a sign, and I'd kind of forgotten that I'd asked for a sign, as we often do. And I saw an optician's. And I went, oh, wow. And I just walked in. A man literally met me, and he said, "You need a new pair of glasses, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And in his hand was the exact same pair made by the exact same company.
Wow.
50 years ago.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing.
And I was just struck. I almost passed out, actually, with the full frontal assault of the mother over something that is totally insignificant, pair of glasses, but cosmically powerful in transforming one's consciousness from doubt to certainty that we're in a loving, intelligent, caring, communicating universe. And so I just want to
that's so your new sight.
And I just want to say, Jim, to that, I think what you just said is there's nothing really insignificant, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to say, I think these signs that we get, they are the deepening of our faith. They are the deepening of our understanding, and to be taken seriously, not to be shuffled off, not to be dismissed. They are gifts. They are gifts in the altering of our consciousness. And I think sometimes we pretend that miracles don't happen. We pretend that these things that we can't explain aren't real. They are real. They are real. It is how the mother is trying to get our attention and to get us to know she's here. And I think part of what I try to do is record them.
Yes.
So that, because if you keep a book of the miracles, if you keep a book of things, then you begin to have actual proof. You can just say, oh, okay, here's a record. Here's a record of what's occurred. And I think that way, when you are in moments of doubt or when you lose your way, you can go to your book and go, no, actually, here it is, you know?
Yeah. Now, let me just ask you a couple questions that have come out of the chats as people have been very attentively and very enthusiastically following your dialogue. One from Maura Cotton, which has come up a couple times, and she put it very elegantly. She said, how do we wed the mother and the city? Because, you know, we're 50% of the human race are in cities. And so I'd love to have your reflections, both of you, on being conscious in the center of the urban deserts that we find ourselves in, whether it's New York or Mumbai or Beijing or Rio de Janeiro. Most of us are urban dwellers living our lives in the antithesis of the mother, because the cities are actually been built to kind of barricade ourselves from nature and to keep it at a distance so that we can control everything. How do both of you bring the mother into the city?
Do you want to start, Andrew? You want me to start?
I'd love you to start, darling. I always want to listen to you.
Listen to yourself. I mean, the mother is inside us. The mother is inside us.
Yes.
And what I would say is there's several ways. I mean, for me, it's how do we treat each other? How do we see each other? How do we acknowledge each other? How do we behave towards each other? How do we bring kindness into how we walk down the street? And how do we bring kindness to how do we interact? That's just one huge piece of it, because I think if we make cities places where people are treated with kindness and respect, then the mother is present. And I think the other thing is how do we make gardens in the city? How do we make gardens on our buildings? How do we make gardens in parks? How do we build gardens everywhere and turn like that beautiful Sylvia Plath poem, like the green came through the grass came through the pavement and it was green with life. How do we bring that greenness into the city? And how do we make beauty everywhere? I was driving down, I was walking down actually Park Avenue the other day, and there were just these bursts of tulips everywhere, just through the whole block. And I thought, beauty. Like, how do we bring beauty into everything we're doing? And kindness and equality and equanimity and making sure people are safe and making sure people feel protected. That's one thought. Yeah.
I think there are three ways I do it. The first way is the way that you do it, Eve, is that you make of your home a temple. Mm-hmm. When I bought my tiny little condo last in my 60s, what I did is consciously create a temple for her. Every room is saturated with the sacred. Mm-hmm. And at the center of the temple is the temple cat, the goddess with fur. So I make my intimate personal life an adoration of her. The second way is to be absolutely dedicated to seeing everyone when I go out of my temple as her. And in this lockdown, this has meant really reaching out to the shattered homeless people that are everywhere, and reaching out to the people who are keeping alive the shops that I buy my food at. And what I've discovered is that the more I open to them as her, the more magical our relationships become. For example, at the local 7-Eleven, which I go to every morning to buy orange juice, there are a group of Gujarati boys who are thrilled that I come from India, and we laugh, we sing songs, we talk about Bollywood actresses, and it's lovely rubbish, but it's so, my whole day is lit up by their smiles and their affection, and I feel I give them the same recognition. And the third way is to stop thinking of cities as deserts and start seeing them as strange, magical, theatrical creations filled with mother magic. I remember something that happened to me in Sydney. I was being invited to speak to a whole group of people about Kabir. And I thought, oh my God, the last thing I want to do is to try and break through the Australian hedonistic mind with Kabir. And I was wandering around Sydney and thinking Sydney is just an urban desert. And suddenly, this great force came into me, and I heard a voice said, look down. And I looked down, and I was just looking at a cracked pavement, and everything in that pavement was dancing. The light was streaming from the cracks, and I started to laugh and laugh and laugh, because if we're going to truly espouse non-separation, we're going to have to be able to see her in the dirty cracks of the pavement radiating light, because everything is crystallized light matter. So when you wake up to her, you see even these strangely desolate cities as magical playgrounds of her synchronicities and theatrical self-explosion. It's astounding.
And in relation to that too, I would say that, I had this amazing meditation where the mother came to me and she kind of showed me that the world she just showed me darkness, darkness, darkness. And she just wrote across the sky, you have one thing to do, and that is raise the vibration.
Yes.
Raise the vibration. And I'm telling you, it's been a very profound thing. What does it mean to raise the vibration wherever you are? To really, because I really believe everything is vibrational and energetic, and everything changes because of the energy. Energy is what is everything. And so I have a game that I play with myself, which is that I have to do one extraordinary act of generosity a day. I have to do one thing that shocks somebody so much in the act of generosity, they go, what? Like that. And it's so much fun. And when you do it, you get far more than the person you're giving it to. You just get far more. Like you just send somebody a check, or whatever it is, you just make it up. Like and something very unexpected. It's really great if you can get surprised into it. But part of it is, how do we stop and end the barrier that lives between us, where we say we can't take care of each other. We can't reach out to people who are poor. We can't lift up people who are suffering. We can't do that because we don't know them, or it's too much, but to just live in that raised vibrational place where you realize that we're all connected to each other all the time. And that
if we do that, cities are the most amazing places to experience that. We both lived in Paris, and Paris has a magical, mystical vibration, which when you enter it, all sorts of extraordinary meetings take place in cities. All sorts of aesthetic feasts take place in cities. Symphony orchestras celebrate the divine in cities. What's all this craziness about cities being deserts? Cities are deserts with weird and wonderful and magical oases.
Indeed. And also, I just want to say something about vibrations. Like, I've been thinking so much about India because I have so many friends in India right now who are suffering. And I feel like the world can change what's happening in India. The world can change it. The world can begin to send things and send, I just was part of a whole a flight where people bought oxygen canisters and all kinds of medical equipment. We can do that. All of us can send our energy and send our resources and send our love to India. We're all part of the story of India. India is us. There is no separation. And I think this notion, that we're going to stop COVID without stopping it everywhere is ludicrous. If COVID has taught us anything, it's our radical interdependence, and that we are all responsible for each other. And
this vaccine apartheid has to end. Every country needs to be flooded with vaccines and the support they need to get back on their feet. But part of that is us being willing to say, open our own generosity, open our own vibrational fields, which say, we're responsible, we're connected. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Always asking that question, you know?
Yes, well, thank you. And by the
That's
way,
an exciting question, yes.
for those of you who haven't been to Paris with Andrew, it's worth the ride. I think we've had pilgrimages in years past, pre-COVID, mystical tours of Paris with Andrew. And maybe V, one of these years, you and Andrew could lead a mystical pilgrimage through the streets of the divinely feminine city of the world. That would be an extraordinary.
I lived there for 8 years, so Andrew and I could definitely do it.
We're drawing.
There was another question you said, and I know that there have been several people saying how much they'd like to participate and ask a question. So it would be great if somebody who would like to ask a question could ask a question right now, if that was possible.
Well, I think, several people have asked with this format, they don't come live because this is Zoom webinar. So I've been tracking them. But the other one was just to say a few more details about Revolution of the Mother and how people can access it, because we want to make sure that people both know about it, but that people attend, because it's going to be a multi-day event with V and Andrew on many of the issues that have been covered. So Andrew, V, why don't you just take a minute and just say a little bit more, and maybe we can put a website into the chat box.
If you go to my website, andrewharvey.net, you'll find an indication of Revolution of the Mother. And if you have any difficulty finding it, just get in touch with my email, andrewharvey919@gmail.com. Everything is there. And you'll see the layout that V and I have created. And we decided that we would do it in an absolutely new kind of way, because bringing a spiritual teacher and a revolutionary artist together has never happened before. So we decided, let's do it in this completely new way. So how it's going to begin is that I'm going to interview V and let her dance. I'm going to be Nureyev to her Wild Fontaine. And then she's going to be Nureyev to my Wild Fontaine. And then we're going to plunge into inviting people to share texts and thoughts and visions and connections that really have exploded open their vision to the mother. And then in the fourth meeting, we're going to, both of us, really ground everything that we have been exploring in our visions of sacred activism. One of the reasons why I so love V is because of her activism, that her whole work is an explosion of activism, a challenge to be responsible, connected, committed, and pour yourself out in service. And that's been the governing passion of my life. And we're going to bring together our visions of sacred activism and really offer practical ways of getting out there. So,
and just say the dates, Andrew.
The 22nd, 23rd. 21st, 22nd, 23rd, that's when it's going to be exploding on your screen.
And we'll promote it between now and then, but just wanted everyone to know about it. Is there anything, V, you want to say quickly about the Revolution of the Mother?
I'm very, very excited to really have this deep dive to explore what is the Revolution of the Mother? What are some of the elements of it? Whether it's looking at empathy, beauty, passion, arts, justice. What are the things we really have to do to bring about this revolution? And I think Andrew and I are looking at it from inside, from outside, but also just how do we deepen our commitment? How are we unashamed of our commitment? How do we come out
and say, like, we are the warriors for our mother, and not be apologetic about it anymore. And for me, it's really, this coming out process has been gradual, and now I feel like ready. I'm ready to really be present for this in a different kind of way. I think we all have to be. And how does it manifest in each of our lives differently? And how do we cross-pollinate and lift each other up in the ways that we are in this time of revolution of the mother? So I think I'm so excited to talk to Andrew, and so excited to hear what he has to say. And I'm also really excited to think about readings that will inspire us and deepen our understandings, and listening to other people bring those readings and thoughts into it.
Well, thank you both so much. And I'd like to conclude by just making a couple of observations about the richness of this past hour of dialogue that I think are very salient for all of us to contemplate further. And I'm hopeful that we can bring Andrew and V together with others for a deeper dive around the intersectionality of gender and sexuality and race and ethnicity. And I say this because I think, V, you said something, and Andrew, you said something that I think is both profound and intensely relevant in our world. The whole notion of wound as portal, and the notion, Andrew, that you mentioned of reimagining heartbreak. When you said that, V, my mind instantly went to George Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, everyone, COVID and the pandemic represents a global wound that we're all suffering together at the same time and in different ways. We're focused on India, for example, but India, even with the intensity that it has, that hasn't approximated the number of COVID deaths and cases in the United States. The United States has been suffering. Brazil has been suffering. India is agonizing right now. But the whole world has been shut down. And in some mysterious way, when Derek Chauvin put his knee on the neck of George Floyd on May 25th last year, there was a wound that became a portal for a global conversation about race that we've never experienced before. And I think it's worth remembering that as he was gasping his last breaths, who was he calling for? The mother. He kept calling for his mother. And it was his own mother who had died several years previously. But in light of this conversation, he was calling for the mother. And I think in that context, you know, your remark, Andrew, is so important. We need to reimagine heartbreak. Because how many Black men have been killed?
And women.
Black women have been killed, and we don't take it in. We don't allow the sadness to be reimagined, but in some deeply mysterious way, the wound of George Floyd enabled and is enabling the world to reimagine heartbreak. And because we're reimagining heartbreak, we're able to engage in what both of you were talking about in terms of a deeper awareness of the meaning of radical empathy.
Right. Without embracing heartbreak and
Exactly.
learning that mystical truth
Exactly.
in heartbreak, we haven't got a hope of
Exactly.
getting radical
Exactly.
empathy.
Exactly. So
And
these are, go ahead, V.
no, go.
So these are deep, deep issues that are in a highly synchronistic way, like the stories of buying the house or the stories of the miracle that Andrew, or even, my little glasses are the mother nature providing synchronicities in the broad light of day through the agony that we're inflicting upon one another to provide a gateway for the reimagination of the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is why the revolution of the mother coming up on the in a couple of weeks with V and Andrew is so important for all of us to take the time to attend. And I mean this very sincerely.
Thank you so much.
It's because they're grappling with the most fundamentally important existential issues confronting the entire human race right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really want to deeply thank you both for the time that you've spent with us today, and I hope that we can deepen the dialogue on some of these powerfully catalytic and foundational issues. And we'll mention this next week and leading up to the 21st of May on your behalf. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I would love it if Andrew, maybe you first and then V, just give us a final thought or benediction, anything that
V first. V comes first in my head.
No, you go first. You go first.
May we all know how loved we are by her. And may we all awaken to the power to transform our world that comes from knowing how loved we are. And may we all burst through all of our comfort zones to stand naked in the fire of this her reality, so that we can become a living flame of it in action.
So beautiful, Andrew. So beautiful. I would say this, just to hopefully complement that. I feel the desire to become truly, truly humble and to be a vessel so that her force, her information, her teachings, her wisdom, her beauty, her love, her passion, her vulnerability, her empathy can come through me as cleanly as possible. And that we end hierarchy and that we embrace inclusion, because I believe at the heart of all oppression, whether it's white supremacy, whether it's transphobia, whether it's imperialism or colonialism, misogyny, is this belief somewhere that some people matter and other people don't. Humans matter more than the earth. Humans matter more than animals. This hierarchy. I pray that I am part of this story, evolving story that erases hierarchy.
May it be so. You've blessed us today, V, Andrew, and we are deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody out there.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you again tomorrow here on Humanity Rising. Same time, same station. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.